Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome back to my channel here, Matt's Off the Cuff Gaming. I am your fearless host, Matt. And yeah, the mic's working just fine. I had momentary. Wait a second. There we go. I couldn't hear myself in my headset because my daughter comes in here and uses these headsets to play games and to listen to music, and then but she doesn't like listening if she says something. She doesn't like hearing it in her ear, so she clicks this button back here. Anyway, um, all right. So wild card weekend. There were 6 games. I went 5-1. I missed one game, and boy, I missed big on that game. And we're going to talk about that. So this was my prediction here on the screen. Okay, so what you see here, I've got I had the Rams over the Cardinals. I had the 49ers over the Cowboys. I had the Buccaneers over the Eagles. I had the Bengals over the Raiders. I picked the Patriots over the Bills. That was my miss. And then I had the Chiefs over the Steelers. So, this is what the second round looked like that I thought it was going to be. So, like I said, I missed one game. So, we're going to go ahead and, you know, give myself a pat on the back or an attaboy or whatever. Going 5-1. You know, I'm not going to say it was a hard picks because for the most part, um, I picked 2 upsets. Okay, and one of them happened. So when I say upsets, a lot of people were on the 49ers, and when we talked about that in the first video when I made the predictions, I said there's a lot of people picking the 49ers, and I was going to go that way too. Um, I went against the Bills because I thought the weather issues were going to really come back and bite them. And I thought that the Patriots defense would be able to make a game of it. Now, I did say that I thought it was going to be a close game, and I completely acknowledged that Buffalo was going to could absolutely win. I did not see that result coming. Basically, Josh Allen played a perfect game. He played statistically one of the most perfect games you can. The Buffalo offense played almost as perfectly as you can statistically and with every measuring stick. So the good news is for me as a Chiefs fan is that means that there's no way they're going to repeat that performance, right? Right? You do that much against some. I mean, they played with an anger yesterday or 2 days ago. The Bills did. Or 3 days ago. I guess it was Saturday night. They played with such a passion and an anger. That was 20 years of pent up frustration that they took out on the Patriots, and just utterly destroyed them. So, okay, so go ahead and click the Bills here. Going to advance them. So now this is what your matchups look like. Okay, I still had the Packers beating the 49ers, and I have the Rams beating the Buccaneers. So I'm going to stick with that, obviously. I had the Chiefs beating the Bengals, and then I had the Titans beating the Patriots. So now we're going to revise this a little bit. Titans and the Bengals. You know, this is a tough game. This is a tough game to predict. Mainly because the Titans, we didn't see them last week, and so there's this whole deal going around right now on Twitter and on some of the FS1 shows. So Nick Wright, who is a national sports talk analyst guy, he used to be from based out of Texas, and then he was in Kansas City for a while, and then he went national. But he's a Chiefs fan, and he totally admits he's a Chiefs fan, and drives a lot of people crazy. Um, Nick had this deal where it was called. He said the Chiefs against the Steelers was better than a bye. Now, his rationale for that was is that the Steelers were so bad that that it gave the Chiefs some practice, gave them some chance to work things out, knock any kind of jitters off or rust off or anything. Which they just played the week before, so I don't know why you'd be rusty. Um, of course, the thing you always have to worry about is injuries, and of course the Chiefs had no injuries in that game, at least nothing significant, and and he doubled down yesterday and probably today too. He's probably still talking about, hashtag better than a buy. One of his co-hosts agreed with him. So here's why I think why it was important, and why I do think that possibly playing was quote unquote better than a bye. The way the Bills utterly dismantled the Patriots as the 3 seed, they were going to play in the first round regardless. Okay, they were playing the wild card round because they were the 3 seed. Up before last year, the Chiefs would have had a bye as the 2 seed, but they didn't. And of course, they had the bye in 2019, and obviously won the Super Bowl that year. Made it to the Super Bowl and then beat the 49ers. So, but after the Bills' utter destruction of the Patriots, on Saturday, so of course the Chiefs didn't play until the next day on Sunday. Even I started thinking to myself, man, everyone's going to be on the Bills this week, and they're going to start. There will be people that say the Chiefs have a chance, but it's just going to be all Bills, 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 Bills. And then the Chiefs went out and just not. I mean, they didn't beat the Steelers like the Bills beat the Patriots, but they almost beat them the same way. I mean, Allen and Mahomes both threw for 5 touchdowns. Mahomes could have thrown for a 6, but they decided to run a gimmick play on the 6th touchdown, to get to 42. And then, then the Chiefs just let off the gas and just played prevent defense and let the Steelers score 2 touchdowns when they were just trying to run the clock. 47-17, the Bills score, and then the Chiefs score was 42-21. Neither of those games were as close as what those scores indicate, and those were 3 to 4 scores apart. Okay, that's how utterly, just absolutely crazy good that the Bills and the Chiefs were this weekend. And because the Chiefs were so good, even dismantling an overmatched Steelers team, now the talk doesn't become so much about the Bills are going to destroy the Chiefs because look what they did to the Patriots and we didn't even see the Chiefs play. Now it's, hey, the perception is that both these teams just utterly dismantled overmatched opponents and now they're going to play each other and it should be a really close game. So, I mean, from the perception angle, from the narrative standpoint, you're going to see that. So how do I see this going now? The Chiefs and Bills. Look, I'm a Chiefs fan. Of course, I'm going to pick the Chiefs to beat the Bills. Okay. Now last year I predicted the Chiefs would beat the Bills, and I said 38-24. I got the final score exactly right. I thought the Chiefs would get out to a big lead and give up some garbage time points, and it would be a 14-point win in the end. And that's exactly what happened last year. The Bills actually got out to a 9-0 lead, and then the Chiefs just said, okay, you're not doing that again. And the Bills, I mean, they're a little different this year. I me've made some improvements, but by and large, they're still the same team as they were last year. They've got some more depth at wide receiver. They've got some better personnel in their secondary. Obviously, they have 2 All-Pro, a first-team All-Pro, second-team All-Pro safety. Their linebacking crew is about the same as it was last year, which is, in my opinion, is overhyped. But they had the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL, and you can't take that away from them. Now, they still lost 6 games. So we'll see. And they have some head scratchers. And that's one thing. This is one thing I tried to make a point in the previous video, and I got sidetracked because I ramble. The Chiefs, unequivocally, do not have a bad loss this year. Okay? Now, you could say, well, they lost to the Ravens and they lost to the Chargers, and those aren't playoff teams. Yeah, okay. The Ravens at one point were 8-3 and the number 1 seed in the AFC, and then injuries and COVID completely destroyed their season. The team that I was really worried about that game in Baltimore in week 2, and for rightful reasons, the Chiefs lost. Now, Chiefs should have won that game, and it was a little bad luck that the Chiefs didn't win. It had nothing to do with the officials. It was just a couple fluke plays, and the Chiefs lost. And the Chiefs kind of beat themselves. And of course, the Ravens going for a 2-point conversion at the end of the game instead of tying the game on an extra point. So there was a lot of risk there on the Ravens side too. But at the end of the season, if the Ravens would have somehow snuck into the playoffs, I would have loved to play them. It was completely a different team than when we played week 2. Lamar Jackson is a much better quarterback than Tyler Huntley. I would have loved to have seen them. But they fell off. And of course, the Chargers are the Chargers. They have some head scratcher losses, but they've got a tremendous offense, tremendous young quarterback, and they beat the Chiefs. That we split with the Chargers this season, and had they not lost to the Texans, I mean, the Steelers wouldn't even been in the playoffs. The Chargers would have been in, and I think that would have probably put the Raiders as the 7th, maybe the Patriots. No, they put the Patriots at the 7th seed. Boy, that would have been an interesting game. Chiefs versus the Patriots. So anyway, so I don't think that this game obviously is going to be a blowout like it was. And last year it was a blowout against the Bills. The Chiefs just completely overwhelmed and overmatched Buffalo. I see this game to be a much closer. I could see a 10-point game, honestly. A situation where the Chiefs or the Bills are up by 3, and then they get a touchdown to make it, increase the lead to 10, and the other team tries to go down and try to make it closer, and then throws an interception or a fumble, gets whatever, something happens and the other team just seals it away. My official prediction right now is going to be Chiefs 34, Buffalo 28. I think the Chiefs do cover right now. They're 2.5. They're getting 2.5 points, or they're laying 2.5 points. I think that's the proper term because they're favorites. But I think the Chiefs are going to win the game by less than a touchdown. I think it's going to be like a 6-point game. Like I said, 34-28, and that's kind of how I see it going. I don't think Josh Allen is going to have a perfect game like he did against the Patriots. But I think he's going to have a much better game than he's had against the Chiefs previously. So, and I know people are saying, "Oh, well, Buffalo beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead earlier this year." Yeah, that was a completely different game. Okay, the Chiefs didn't have Ingram yet on their team. Chris Jones didn't play in that game. The Chiefs were missing a couple key people, in their secondary. They were missing one of their linebackers. Mahomes threw 4 interceptions in the game. No, 2 interceptions, and then I think we had 2 fumbles. Regardless, I know the Chiefs turned the ball over 4 times. That's the only way that the Bills are going to, in my opinion, are going to be able to come into Kansas City and win, is to win the turnover battle. The Chiefs win the turnover battle, or it's even. The Chiefs are going to win this game, and that's how I see it. And then the Bengals and Titans again. So this is where the kind of the better than a bye thing comes in. But because we saw the Bengals win. Now we're going to get to these other games. I want to break down the games that happened a little bit. We're almost 13 minutes into this video, but I do want to break down the games right after we talk about all these predictions. I'm going to go ahead and move the Titans, and I've picked them to go to the conference championship game and host the Chiefs. I'm not going to switch it up and say the Bengals deserve it because, in my opinion, the Bengals played a very average game, and they were the recipients of just horrendous officiating. I talked about the officiating in the Chiefs Bengals game in the last video, and we're going to talk about the officiating in the Raiders and Bengals game here coming up. So here's how I think it's going to go: Rams and Packers, Chiefs and Titans. And again, I'm going to advance Chiefs and Packers to the Super Bowl, and of course I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win still. So I'm not going off that. And like I told you last week, I really do think the Packers probably are the better team and the more complete team. But when it gets to the Super Bowl, you just never know. And look, I'm never gonna bet against Patrick Mahomes until he proves to me that he is just a flawed quarterback. I'm always gonna pick him. I mean, does that make me a biased fan? Well, no, not really, because he's proven it to me before. And Mahomes is now 51-2 in his career when the other team doesn't score 30 points. So you got to score 30 points to beat them. Can the Packers score 30 points in the Chiefs with Aaron Rodgers? Absolutely. Absolutely they can. Now, this matchup here, Packers and 49ers, the Packers are going to get to the Super Bowl if they win this game. Okay? I don't think the Packers will have any trouble with the Buccaneers or the Rams. Like I said, I have the Rams beating the Buccaneers, especially after what we saw last night. The Rams just tremendous game. But the 49ers have the personnel to beat the Packers. And I'm curious to see if Jimmy Garoppolo plays or if it's going to be Trey Lance. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the games that were. Chiefs and Steelers. Again, this is my team. Okay, we're going to just go through the box scores here a little bit. I'm going to increase the size here a little bit so it's easier to see on the screen here. again, I look at Ben Roethlisberger's stats. Of course, we all know. I mean, this looks like a decent stat line. 4.9 yards per attempt is not good. QBR QBR of 15 and a quarterback rating of 92. He's like, why are those things so far apart? Well, it's because he was awful in the first half and only had 40 yards of offense, 40 yards passing. Or I think the Steelers only had 40 yards at halftime, something like that, 40 or 44 yards. But by the end of the night, it's 215 yards on 44 attempts. That's not great, but threw 2 touchdowns, no picks, even though he should have had 2 or 3 interceptions. Roethlisberger with an average stat line for his last game. And of course, we all know all those yards came in garbage time when the Chiefs were just in prevent defense. Mahomes wasn't perfect. Obviously, threw a pick. A lot of times on tipped balls, I don't fault the quarterback. That interception was most definitely 100% Mahomes' fault. He didn't see T.J. Watt there, and he threw back across his body. And Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL at throwing back across his body and not having it go against him. But he didn't see Watt there. He deflected it up in the air, and it was an easy interception. And that was that. And of course, Travis Kelce throwing the touchdown there at the end of the game to give the Chiefs up to 42 points. The one thing I do want to just key on here real quick before we move on, Jerick McKinnon, 61 yards rushing. He averaged a little over 5 yards in an attempt, and then McKinnon also caught 6 passes for 81 yards and a touchdown. And that 23-yard reception, that was the screen pass, which was honestly, I don't know how he didn't score on that play with 3 offensive linemen out there in front of him blocking, but it was tremendous play call on third down to get the Chiefs down to first and goal at the 5. And Jerick McKinnon, look, this is another guy that the Bills are going to have to game plan for. So, again, this game, 42-21, 21-point win for the Chiefs. It wasn't even that close. The Chiefs, if they really wanted to, if they wanted to not play prevent defense, I don't think the Steelers would have scored those 2 touchdowns. This easily could have been a 42-7, 49-7 type of game. It could have even looked worse than what the Bills beat the Patriots by. But I'm going to call those games even. So, all right, so we're going to switch over here to the Bills and Patriots next. We're going to get to the Raiders and Bengals last, at least for the AFC games. Not much to say here either. Bills and Patriots, holy cow. Yeah, I was wrong. I picked the Patriots to win. I thought that maybe the weather was going to impact Josh Allen. It didn't. Look, he had 4 incompletions. He had 1 more touchdown than he had incompletions. 308 yards. Look, 158.3 is perfect. He didn't have a perfect quarterback rating. I'm not sure how. That equates to not a perfect quarterback rating. Josh Allen was. I was just going to say he was perfect in this game. I think QBR stops at 100, so he was 1.5 points off a perfect QBR. The Bills were completely overmatched, or they completely overmatched the Patriots. Mac Jones. Again, kind of like Roethlisberger, got some decent stats in the second half, some garbage time scores and some yards. But he was awful in the first half, and it really showed when he wilted under pressure. So, congratulations to the Bills for vanquishing your longtime rival. All right, let's go to the Raiders and Bengals. This was a game I said that I didn't think the Raiders had any business winning, which then ironically, it makes me think that they have a shot of winning. Burrow played a pretty good game. He didn't have a legendary performance. And as we can see here, they ran the ball 25 times for 83 yards and averaged just a little over 3 yards a carry. So the running attack did nothing. And that's mostly Joe Mixon there. 17 carries for 48 yards, less than 3 yards a carry. Jamar Chase had a couple runs, long of 15. So then he had 2 carries for 8 yards other than that. So they ran some of these, Evans and Boyd, and then Perrine, who obviously he's a third down back who just doesn't get much playing time anymore now that Mixon's healthy. Cincinnati is going out there and they're going to pass the ball. Okay, Jamar Chase, another big game, 9 for 116. But even then, 200. I think 220. That's because he got sacked twice. Yeah, he got sacked, so that comes out of your passing yards for the team. But 244 yards passing. That's very pedestrian, and the Raiders don't have a very good defense. Cincinnati, I think, was just happy to be there. It was more of a thing where, they led almost. I think they led the. I think they were down 3-0, and then they came back, and then they led the rest of the game, and the Raiders never led after that. Obviously, they led 26-16, or 26-13, and then the Raiders got a. It was 23-16. Then the Bengals kicked a field goal, and then the Raiders got a field goal to pull within a touchdown. And of course, the Raiders had the ball. At the end of the game, and had every shot. Oops, that's the Bengals. And on the 4th and goal at the Cincinnati 9, Derek Carr intercepted by Pratt. And he threw it short of the goal line. I probably wasn't going to be even if the receiver catches it. I don't think the Raiders get into the end zone. I think they're going to be 2 yards short, or at least a yard short. So this game, again, marred by just absolutely horrendous officiating. Officiating that usually slanted towards the Bengals. Again, I'm really concerned about why the Bengals suddenly in this last month of the season, last part of the regular season, and now it's the first week of the playoffs. Why are the Bengals, a 10-7 team, who are 5-4 at home, why are they suddenly getting the benefit of the doubt on these calls? Is it just luck? I don't know. It could be. So let's talk about the thing that everybody's talking about. So Joe Burrow, on his touchdown pass to Tyler Boyd, was it Tyler Boyd or was it Uzma? I can't remember which one it was. It looked like Burrow was going to go out of bounds. And the official thought he was going to go out of bounds, or thought he stepped out of bounds and blew the whistle. He went on to complete the pass. Now, the pass, it looked like the pass, he threw the ball about the same, and then the whistle blew. The whistle blew well before the catch was made in the end zone. But obviously, Burrow never did go out of bounds, but the officials did blow the whistle. Okay, so the rule states, when the whistle blows, the play is dead right there. Okay? Anything that happens after the whistle blow does not count. Now, so let's talk about the first part of the question. Should the referee or should the official, whoever, I think it was the side judge, but we'll just say the referee or the official, should the official have blown the whistle? No, he should not have. Burrow was not out of bounds. But he did blow the whistle. It wasn't an inadvertent whistle either. It wasn't like he just accidentally blew it and he really thought that Burrow went out of bounds. Made a mistake. So by the rule, anything happens after that should be disallowed. They went ahead and allowed the touch, and so he threw the touchdown pass. They went ahead and allowed the touchdown pass to stand after the whistle blew. Now, here's the problem with this. You are taught as a football player. Now, I never played football, but look, I watch football. I know enough about it to talk about it. But you are taught from Pee Wee football, Pop Warner football, middle school football, high school football. You are taught when the whistle blows, you stop. You stop playing. You don't play through the whistle. You don't play after the whistle. You don't assume that the whistle is wrong and keep playing. When the whistle blows, the play's over. You stop. It's to prevent several things. One, it's to prevent injuries. Okay? It's also to prevent personal fouls for people, playing after they think, I think that whistle wasn't. I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to keep going. Or you could have some dirty players like Ndamukong Suh, who's I think he's just about ready to retire, but I can't stand that guy. You could have dirty players who come out and they're like, I heard the whistle, but I'm going to keep going, and I'm just going to say, because the referees now give us this opportunity to say that we thought we didn't hear the whistle, and I just kept playing, and they're not going to penalize me, and I'm going to hit this guy in his ankle, or I'm gonna get this guy in his knee, or I'm gonna body slam him to the ground because I'm just playing my game. I didn't hear the whistle. You open up an insane can of worms if you allow players to interpret if the whistle is legitimate or not. Look, and as a neutral party, I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm definitely not a Raider. I'm a Chiefs fan. So therefore, and if Bengal fans are listening to this, you're like, oh, you just don't like the Bengals because the Bengals beat you the other week. Look, I think the Bengals fans right now have a very overinflated sense of self-importance and arrogance and ego right now that they haven't earned. But I have nothing against the Bengals in general. I mean, they're just another team. Now, the Raiders, they're a rival of mine. I hate the Raiders. I never will cheer for the Raiders. But I side with the Raiders on this because I side with the rule book. And my team, the Chiefs, or when I went to college, when I went to Mizzou, my teams have been penalized for in either inadvertent whistles or whistles blown that were not inadvertent but they shouldn't have been. And I've been on the other side of this, and it sucks. It sucks, especially if something good happens. But here's the thing: that whistle blows, the defenders are going to stop. Now, the argument among Cincinnati fans right now is that, well, the whistle had no outcome on the result of the play. Well, you don't know that. You don't know that. And that's irrelevant to the point. The whistle still blew. You can't decide when and how to enforce a whistle blowing because the players can't make that decision for themselves. They have to stop. Therefore, the whistle stops the play. Always, always, always. You can't change the rule book to say, well, we're going to go ahead and allow this to happen because we shouldn't have blown the whistle. So what you're doing there is that if the defenders stop playing, and then the offensive team gets a first down, gets a touchdown, makes a big play, and then the defense is like, wait a second, the whistle blew. I stopped going after the receiver because the whistle blew. So now you would be encouraging them to, even if they heard a whistle, to play after the play because they're like, well, we don't know if the referees are going to disallow this whistle or not. So I'm gonna tackle this guy even after I hear a whistle. You can't have players making that decision, and there's no way to police that through replay or anything. The one thing we can do is demand better for officials and hold them accountable. So the NFL is going to hold this crew accountable. They're not going to referee. They're not going to officiate again in the postseason. I guess that's a start. The NFL needs full-time officials with much better training. And I look at this as the way I do with Major League Baseball. You can go on YouTube and, you can get all these videos where, umpires are making bad calls. Look, Major League Baseball umpires are full-time. That's what they do. Now, minor league umpires, they will have a second job because it's minor league umpiring sucks, but you got to pay your dues to get to the majors. But they're full-time umpires. And they might have side jobs in the off-season, but there's a lot expected of umpires. And when you really break it down, you're a baseball fan like I am, and you watch as much baseball as I do, and you analyze it. I consider myself a student of the game. I played baseball at a semi-high level when I was younger, my mid-teenage years. There is a common thread among Major League Baseball umpires is that they're typically always right. And since the institution of replay, 8 or 9 years ago, in Major League Baseball, what replay has done is, it's allowed them to get some calls right, that they may have missed. But what it's also done, it's also proved that they are right typically most of the time. Almost all of the time they are correct. And now there's, calling balls and strikes sometimes can be very subjective. And I do think we're heading towards robot umpires in there. I don't want to talk too much about this. This is more about football, but I'm just trying to make the comparison that Major League Baseball umpires are much better overall at their profession than NFL officials are. Now, some crews are better than others. Okay, but when officiating crews are the subject of multiple playoff games, there's a problem. Either there's a real problem or a perception problem. But regardless, that both of those are problems, and the NFL needs to fix that. Okay. Now, how much did that have an impact on the game? Well, the Bengals probably still could have scored a touchdown on that drive. And it's impossible to say, oh, you take those 7 points away. The Raiders, they're not, going down to the 9 yard line and just wasting plays. They're going to kick a field goal and win the game. They're 22-19. Look, that's overly simplistic thinking. I've said this many times. You can't assume that the game is going to play out exactly the way it does if you change one thing. Everything changes at that point. Cincinnati ultimately won, and you have to be better than the mistakes by the officials. Okay, and the Raiders weren't better than the mistakes by the officials, and it sucks for them. And I do feel sorry for their fans, some of their fans, not all of their fans. And I think this is ultimately going to hurt Cincinnati more, honestly. The Raiders they were happy to be here, went through a coaching change. The Bengals, in my opinion, like I said, are really, really arrogant right now, and an arrogance that they haven't earned. The Chiefs have an arrogance about them, too. They've earned it. Okay? The Buccaneers have an arrogance about them. They've earned it. Packers as well. Even the 49ers to an extent. Dallas, no. So, all right, so let's move on to the Eagles and Buccaneers. This game, in the end, was a 16-point game. Look, Jalen Hurts, threw some garbage time touchdown, and then, they got some late scores there in the fourth quarter, and then had a chance to get the ball back again to even make it closer. Look, this game was 31-0 after 3 quarters. This game was a blowout. This was an incredibly boring game. I watched a little bit of it. It was just so boring. It was such a boring game to watch. So yeah, not much to say about this. Tampa Bay, they looked really solid. It was very methodical. They beat a really bad football team. When I say a really bad football team, they probably beat the worst football team that went to the playoffs, and the Eagles. And again, what we've seen now in 2 years of a 2 versus a 7, only one of those games, the Colts and the Bills last year was a good game. The Colts, obviously the 7 seed. All the 3 other games, the other game last year in the NFC, and these two that this year, the Steelers and the Eagles, both the 7 seeds. Both these teams, they don't deserve to be in the playoffs. They made it because the rules say they can make it this year, but I think this is more of an indictment that there's so much of a difference between that 2 and 7 seed, and I look, you might as well just add a couple more playoff teams and get that 2 seed their buyback. Honestly, they deserve it. Okay. 49ers and Cowboys, then we have Cardinals and Rams. So we'll do Cardinals and Rams first here. I'm going to talk about the 49ers and Cowboys last. Again, not much of a contest last night. Arizona was awful. Kyler Murray, look, a 7.6 QBR, 40.9 his quarterback rating, threw one of the worst interceptions I've ever seen, returned for a touchdown. And it was the shortest return for a touchdown in NFL playoff history. It was like a 2-yard return because he intercepted on the 2-yard line. Murray, Arizona at one point, they were 10-2 and had the best record in football. And since being 10-2, they went 1-5 or 1-4 to close out the season, and then they lost today. So they lost 5 of their last 6 games. I thought maybe at first it was because of their product of their schedule, like they started playing better teams, but they beat some really good teams in their first 12 games, and they had a couple good wins, and then of course they beat the Cowboys in Dallas, in the second to last week of the season, which I'll give them credit for that. They won that game, so props to them. They had a couple head scratcher losses, but by and large they kind of went according to schedule, and they beat some really good teams as well. Kyler Murray it looked like the stage was too big for him last night. And the Rams were they were ready for that. What really surprised me about the game was just how much the Rams ran the football. I guess I didn't, like I said in my last video, I don't know too much about the Cardinals or the Rams. And if you look here, Matt Stafford threw 17 passes for 202 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oh, look, Sony Michel ran the ball 13 times. Cam Akers was really good. I mean, only 3.2 yards a carry, but man, he had some explosiveness I hadn't seen before. They ran the ball 38 times for 140 yards. Man, that's a lot of rushing attempts. They ran the ball 20 more times than they passed. I didn't realize the Rams were a running team like that. I thought they were kind of a throw it all over the yard type of team, especially with Kupp, Odell Beckham Jr. and now Tyler Higbee is a really good up and coming tight end. Van Jefferson is, he's their third receiver, and that's basically all who caught passes yesterday because they only completed 14 passes, one of them by Odell Beckham Jr. So the Rams really, really impressed me last night. Their defense was just amazing. They hounded Kyler Murray all game and just completely embarrassed him. And just I'm almost wondering what Kingsbury is going to be doing next season. There's some talk that he may lose his job. I don't think he loses his job. I think he's given another season. But if they have a poor season next year or make the playoffs and kind of have a end their season similar to how they did this year, I do think Kingsbury is probably on the hot seat next year. He's got to win. So congrats to the Rams. I watched this entire game except for about a 10-15 minute stretch in the second half where I fell asleep on the couch. But other than that, I watched this whole game, and I was really, really impressed with what I saw. The Rams definitely can beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay. Last game, 49ers and Cowboys. Look, I said Dallas was a product of their schedule, and I said they were perfect against the NFC East, and they were a game over 500, 6-5 against everybody else. And now that they've lost in the playoffs, they're still perfect against the NFC East, and now they're 6-6 against everybody else. Look, they're a 500 team when they're not playing the worst football teams in all of the NFL, in the worst division in all of the NFL. Now, that said, San Francisco didn't play a great game on offense. Jimmy Garoppolo was meh. I mean, he had a couple nice drives, but man, he threw in a horrible interception, just an awful interception. They ran the ball really well with Debo Samuel. Mitchell was effective in spots, but it seemed like a lot of his carries were 2 and 3 yards. Yeah, if you see right here, 27 carries for 96 yards, so 3.5 yards a carry. But overall, 38 carries, 169 yards, 4.5 yards per attempt, and 2 touchdowns. That's good for their rushing attack. Debo Samuel is a really, really, really good football player. I would love to have him on the Chiefs. I think Andy Reid would be able to do amazing things with that guy. So let's talk about the end of the game. Well, the defense of the 49ers was really the story here for most of the game. They really held Dak Prescott in check. But at the end of the game, 23-17, the Cowboys down by 6. They had an opportunity to drive down the field for a game-winning touchdown. And as the clock has stopped with 14 seconds to go, they are... Here, let's get the exact timing of everything since we have it right here. So the clock was stopped after San Francisco. They called a timeout at 14. Schultz was pushed out of bounds after picking up 9 yards at 14 seconds left, and the Niners called a timeout. So that didn't stop the clock. The clock was already stopped. That's right. So they're at the San Francisco 41-yard line. Okay, so they've got 41 yards to go in order to get into the end zone. At 2nd and 1, you're not playing against the sticks. You're not playing against getting a first down. You have 2 plays at most. Now, the defense the 49ers were running, if you saw it on the TV broadcast, it was crazy. They had 3 guys literally standing on the sidelines in the field of play, but on the sideline on one boundary, and they had 3 guys on the other boundary. They were going to let the Cowboys just do whatever they wanted in the middle field. They had a couple of guys deep just to make sure that it's get a touchdown. But they were not going to let the Cowboys get out of bounds. So what happens? The ball is snapped. Prescott immediately takes the ball. He's in the shotgun. Immediately takes off, running straight up the middle, picks up 17 yards. So now they're at the 24-yard line. The problem is that he slid with 5 seconds to go, 6 seconds to go. He didn't give his team enough time. Now, you are taught as a quarterback or as a skill player, anybody, especially when you're running 2-minute offense like this, and every second is important. When you have no timeouts and the clock is running, you cannot set the ball yourself. Okay, you find the umpire, who is the one who's supposed to set the ball. The umpire has to set the ball between every play. Okay, it's the rules. That's just the rules. Okay, you've got to find the umpire, give him the ball, and let him set it, and then you can snap the ball. Where Dak Prescott failed here was that he gave the ball to his center, and the center spotted the ball, and the umpire is trying to get there to set the ball, and he had to bust through the offensive line. And there's all this talk, Skip Bayless was going crazy about this, and he almost knocked Prescott over, and he bumped into the offensive line trying to get to the ball. Well, what did you want him to do? Did you want him to run around the offensive line and waste 3 seconds, which they didn't have? He was trying to do you guys a favor. You guys were the ones who screwed up. The Cowboys are the ones who screwed up by not looking for the official to give him the ball to spot it. The umpire, he didn't make the wrong decision, or he wasn't late getting there like Mike McCarthy insinuated. That was a very poor decision. At the very least, if you're going to run that play, you've got to cut it 10 yards shorter. Okay? Look, he got down to the 24. What's the difference between throwing a pass from the 24-yard line or the 34-yard line, or even the 30-yard line? There's no difference. You're still going to run the 5 vertical routes that Mike McCarthy talked about in the post-game interview. You're still going to run 5 verticals, regardless if you're at the 24 or the 34-yard line. And he said, well, we can't run 5 verticals, from midfield. You're not running it from midfield on the previous play. You're running it from the 41-yard line. I'm sorry. Mike McCarthy deserves to be fired. 18-16 now in 2 seasons with Dallas. In the NFC East, come on. That's not good enough. And Cowboy fans should demand better. Now, what I think is funny is that they got the ball spotted. Look, they got the ball spotted. And they ran a play. Prescott spiked the ball to stop the clock at 0. You can't do that. You didn't have time. They could have ran a play. Now, honestly, I think it would have been a penalty, because if you watch the replay, when the official moved the ball back, now suddenly the receiver, who was at the top of the screen on the TV broadcast, he would have been offsides, and then the game would have automatically been over, because that would have been illegal formation or offsides. It would have been an automatic 10-yard runoff, or 10-second runoff, which would have ended the game. All right, so we're at 43 minutes here on the video. So those are my thoughts on the games. I thought the officials did a great job at the end of the Dallas-San Francisco game. I thought they did a very poor job in the Raiders and Bengals game. And then we just had several blowouts. Cardinals and Rams, blowout. Eagles and Bucks, blowout. Patriots and Bills, blowout. Chiefs and Steelers, blowout. We had 4 blowouts. Yeah, we had 4 blowouts and we had 2 close games. And the 2 close games had some controversy with the officials. In my opinion, only one of the games deserved the controversy. There was no controversy in this game, in my opinion. The officials did exactly what they were supposed to do. So that was the first round of the NFL playoffs. And, as we see here now, let's go ahead and let's clear out. Let's clear this out. This is what it looks like now. We got 1 versus 6, 2 versus 4, 3 versus 2, and 1 versus 4. And the NFC and AFC respectively. So how's it going to play out? Like I said, you guys have my picks. I still think the Chiefs are going to go on and go to the Super Bowl and win for the second time in 3 years. But Sunday is going to be very, very, very tough game for them. And like I said, I think the Chiefs pull it out by less than a touchdown. And I know Bills fans don't agree with that. Well, that's fine. You pick your team. I'm going to pick my team, but I'm going to at least give some reasons. And we're going to do a video later in the week about, we're going to break this game down. I'm going to do we're going to do some simulations on Madden, which are not official simulations, but we're going to do some Madden simulations with updated rosters. And I found an online simulator to do, and I started running some simulations, and it was given like a 58 to 42 edge to Buffalo. But as I really started breaking these simulations down, it was I noticed something weird. On one of the games I simulated, it's all text, and it showed every play. And the Chiefs went up like 3-0 in one of these games. And the first field goal, Elliott Fry kicked the field goal. I'm like, well, that's weird. Why is Elliott Fry kicking field goals for the Chiefs? And then the next drive, the Chiefs scored a touchdown, and Harrison Butker kicked the extra point. And then Butker kicked a field goal later in the game. I'm like, what? What? And then I did another game that I simulated. Michael Burton had 12 carries for like 72 yards. I'm like, has he touched the ball 12 times this entire season? So it was. I soon realized that simulator website was definitely not very accurate. So when it was putting players in, like it had Harrison Butker also punting a couple times for the Chiefs, and there was another one where the Chiefs won 28-21 or I'm sorry, it was 28-24. The Chiefs beat the Bills, and I looked at the end of the game, and Buffalo had they ran 6 plays, and only one of them was a pass. They just kept running the football, and it ended on the Chiefs' like 32-yard line. They never ran a pass. They just kept running the football with Singletary, and they picked up like 25 yards, and that was it. That was the end of the game. I'm like, there's no way that would happen in real life. So yeah, I was like, yeah, that simulator website definitely not very accurate. So it's just rolling the dice and just seeing, oh, they're going to run a play from, oh, they're going to pass it here. Oh, they're going to get sacked here. So anyway, it was a fun weekend. Watched a lot of these games. Let me know what you think about my analysis. If you think I'm crazy, go ahead and tell me I'm crazy. But do like the video if you watched it, you made it this far. Consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.